Okay, I've got the trailer hooked up to the truck because I'm going to go pick up something big. Okay, so here I am at the shipping depot in Manchester. Now, you can actually have the a BendPak lift delivered straight to your house. However, you have to be able to unload it, and the problem is it's about 1,600 pounds total, which is more than I can unload all at once with my tractor. And definitely, if you don't have something like a tractor or a forklift, you pretty much need to just pick it up with the trailer and you know unload it piece by piece. The individual pieces, some of them are pretty heavy, but it's certainly manageable. Here you can see I'm unbolting it from there's some temporary metal supports on the ends of it that it holds it together, and I was able to pick the individual parts off with the tractor. Now this is the heaviest part here. This is one of the runways and this one has the hydraulic cylinder in it, so you could probably do it with two people. 3 or 4 would certainly make it easy, but the tractor made short work of it. A few small parts that I had to just wheel off by hand, and then this is the other ramp. This one's a little bit lighter since it doesn't have the hydraulic cylinder, but certainly not something I wanted to carry by myself. 2 people could certainly handle this. Had some a lot of maneuvering to do to get this into the barn. The door is a little too narrow to just drive through with it, so a lot of maneuvering here, and of course I got a little bit careless and ran into, you can see my fork jams into the side of the door opening. Just scratched it, nothing too bad. This one I had to do some physical work on it since it was shipped face down. So when I picked it up off the trailer, it was the wrong way around, so I had to flip it around. And of course, I had to remove the temporary supports that bolted everything together, and then finally finished flipping it around so that it was facing right side up. Now, for maneuvering it around the shop, I put it on a couple of wheel dollies, which worked pretty well. I was able to move it around easily and get them where I wanted to, and then later on just used a jack to lift it up to get it into place. Okay, well, getting everything unloaded was a fair bit of work. Kind of tired me out, but after I did that, luckily I needed a break, which was a good opportunity for me to sit down, read through the instructions, make sure I know what I'm doing. Standard disclaimer: don't take anything you see me do as gospel. This is heavy stuff. Do it at your own risk if you do choose to install a lift yourself. BendPak does have dealers and installers that will install it. I'm choosing to do it myself because, well, that's the kind of guy I am. I like to do things on my own, save a few bucks, but mostly I'm just a control freak, I guess. So getting it unloaded was a fair bit of work. The only thing that's really heavy, that might be a little hard for 2 people, is the actual ramps or the runways that the vehicle drives up on. Those, especially one of those has the hydraulic cylinder in it. That one's pretty heavy, but with the tractor I got it out of here. I've got it on some wheel dollies right now, so I should be able to roll it into place. And my hope is I can get this installed by myself. Be easier with 2 people, but I'm in the shop by myself. We'll see how that works. So I think tonight, I plan on taking my time on this. Tonight I'm really just going to get organized. I'm going to lay things out where I want them, and make sure I'm ready to go, and I'll probably get started for real tomorrow. Well, I've looked at, read through the instructions, and I also did a little YouTube research and looked for, other videos of people putting these together. And there's one thing I did notice, and there's not a lot of videos out there, but I did see a couple. And one of the things that the instructions say you should do is use a forklift to lift the cross space up, and while the posts are standing, drop it on, which to me just sounds dangerous because you're very likely to knock these over, because they specifically say you shouldn't bolt them down at this point. so they'd be fairly unstable. What I've seen most people do is lay them down like this, slide the cross brace in, and then lift the post, which I think is going to work much better. The cross braces, of course, are one of the heavier bits, so this is something that would be easier with two people, but we'll see if I can manage. Lifting them up by myself is going to be a challenge. Actually, we'll start with this. Actually, this is stiff enough that... Okay, this is easier than I thought. And the first side is up. This is going smoother than I thought it would. So now this is not going to be the final location for this. One of the reasons I went for a 4-post lift is BendPak sells a caster wheel kit, so I can't move it with a car on it, but I can easily move the lift around. So I'm not worried about exact location right now, but I am doing the layout and the measuring so that the posts are the right distance to each other relative to each other, so that when I put the runways on, they should line up properly so that I don't have to jiggle things around after things get heavy. So I'm measuring it out based on what they recommend for distances, and I'm going to square things up, and then I'm going to set the other 2 posts in place just like I did the first 2, and then it should start to look like a lift at least. Well, I screwed up already. Not a major screw up, but I read through the instructions completely, but you always miss stuff the first time. I thought, and at first glance, it really looks like the 2 crossbars are the same. But then I just noticed that it calls one a large window cross tube, the other one a small window cross tube. And I'm realizing that the one that I installed, which should be the large window one, they're almost not different, but there's a tiny bit of difference where these windows are larger. So I need to drop the first 2 posts back down, pull that crossbar out, put the right one in. So at least it was easier than I thought it was to put it in, so it shouldn't be too hard to fix. Wouldn't be the heaviest strip, of course. So you can see I've got all 4 posts, I've got the cross braces, and now I need to climb up on a ladder and install more hardware into the posts. Wow, I really should have believed myself the first time. I shouldn't have doubted myself the first time. Remember earlier when I said I had the wrong crossbar installed? Turns out I had the right one, so then I switched it, and now it's the wrong one. I'll show you where my confusion was, just so no one else gets confused on the same thing. I was looking at this diagram from the instructions, and in pretty much every other picture, they've got the post that's going to have the power unit over here. I neglected to notice that they had it over here, which means it's rotated from what I was looking at on other things. And it says the small window and the large window cross tube. So when I saw this diagram, I thought I had it wrong. Then I looked at the other one that said that the windows should be adjacent to the power unit, and I thought, but they're backwards. I went back and looked at this diagram, realized my mistakes, so I get to move that heavy piece, or both those heavy pieces again. It's a good thing that that part is actually easier than I thought it was going to be, because it turns out I'm doing it more often than I really expected. So the key is make sure that the windows, that one's backwards. God damn it. One more time. I'm getting good at this now. Okay, as I was saying, the windows, which I don't know if you can see there or not, they go to the inside and towards the side with the that'll have the power unit. And on that note, I'm done for tonight. I'm gonna have a beer and get back to this tomorrow. Okay, day 2. I'm gonna see about getting this wrapped up today. I'll need to do the wiring and stuff. That may, I'm not sure if I'll get all that done today, but hopefully I can get everything assembled. So next steps are I've got to climb up on the ladder and install some bits in here. And so it's the support mechanism that the rails lock into to support it when the lift is up is the next step. So actually I'm realizing the instructions show dropping this in from the very top, but there's actually more than enough room to just slide it in and drop it in place. Easy as that. Actually, I think that might be easier than climbing up there. Okay, here you can see the notches in these plastic sliders, and that is where these pieces go. They slide right into there so that the locking mechanism can reach into these notches and support the lift. Okay, one thing I realized as I did some of these is it's very easy to get it into the top set of notches. There's 2 separate plastic guide blocks on those, and you get it in the top one easily because you can see it. But if you see that this is almost flush with the top, it should be much lower than that. And I found the secret is make sure you push back in, and that'll get it lined up with the lower ones. And now you can see that there's about 2 inches between the top of this lock plate and the top of the post. So I think I've got all of them installed properly now. Okay, so these top plates here that mount on top of the columns, this is actually what's going to support the weight of the vehicle. There's a hole in here that's going to support the ladder that the cross brace locks into, and the other hole is what's actually going to connect to the cable. So what they say to do here is one of these nuts needs to go all the way down. So one nut is just so that when the lift is coming up, the ladder doesn't try to lift. And then the other nut is what's going to support the weight of the ladder and the entire lift. Now, what direction does this go? It appears it has to go this direction, and the smaller hole that's towards the edge supports the ladder. The larger hole that's close to the middle is later on the cable's going to connect to that. There's 2 tabs that I believe need to go to the inside. I think I need to just tweak, there it goes. And then we have 2 small bolts that holds this cap in place. They're not supporting the weight, they're just 6mm bolt. So they're not supporting the weight of anything, they're just holding the cap in place. So now this top nut needs to be tightened pretty much all the way until the jam nut is just touching it. I believe we go back and level it, so I may back it off a little bit before towards the end. But for now, we want to lift this ladder up pretty much as far as we can with the nut. The important thing is the ladder can't rest on the ground because that would actually bend it. It needs to be hanging, not supporting from the bottom. 3 more to go. Okay, so I've got the top posts all taken care of. So now the next step, these actually need to be raised up until they actually lock into the ladder bars. And this is one of those things that's probably easier to do with 2 people, but I've already done that one just so you didn't have to see me fumbling, so I figured out how to do it. But I'm finding the best way to do it is lift one side just a little bit, put a block under it, and keep doing that until I can get my floor jack under it, lift it up, and eventually I can get it up high enough to latch in. Now it's very important to do this slowly and carefully because these things are not bolted to the ground and they could tip over. So if either side doesn't move smoothly, definitely check it, make sure the ladder's in there properly because you don't want anything to bind. We should hear it click in. There's one side, there's the other. Okay, now both cross braces are supported with the internal ladders, and I can move on to the next step, which is the heavy part. Okay, so there was something in the instructions that I didn't completely understand from reading the instructions until I actually got to that point. There's actually 2 safety locks on here. One is the one that's just in normal use whenever that actually supports the weight of the car after it's raised. You lower it down onto those safety locks. There's another set of safety locks that is tied to the pulleys that the cable runs through, so that if that cable ever breaks, they automatically engage. Now, for those, that slack safety lock, they call it, there was talk in here about making sure that that's not engaged. And when it was lower, I didn't quite understand. But once I got it up, I realized that it was actually resting on the slack safety lock, not on the lock that the normal lock. So what I had to do, I just fixed one side here. I'm going to fix this side. Okay, so this pulley here, it's completely tight because that is actually connected to a lever that's on the safety lock that goes back in here, but the weight of the crossbar is resting on that. So what I need to do is I need to take the weight off, disengage that by holding it back, and then lower it down so that it's resting on the proper lock. Okay, so with the weight off, I can push back on this pulley, which is what will happen when there's tension on the cable. Okay, and now we're on the proper lock. Okay, now for the heaviest part. These runways are definitely the heaviest part of the whole lift. This one especially, the hydraulic cylinder that drives the whole thing, there's just one of them and it's built into this lift. So this is definitely the heaviest part. Something that would certainly be easier with 2 people, but I think I can manage. I can kind of lift one side, no problem. And with the jack, I think I should definitely be able to get it there. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to jack it up at least as far as I can. I should be, right now I've got it slid underneath on that side and just short here. I'm going to lift it up on one side, pull it up over there, lift it up on the other side, and it should drop right into place. Perfect. Okay, should be able to just slide it into place and it should just drop right in. Okay, there it is. That is the heaviest part of the whole job, and it wasn't too bad. Once I figured out how to do it, the other one should be quick. Okay, so getting back onto the project, I was out for a little bit this afternoon, but we'll see what we can get wrapped up this evening. I think the last bit of the project's going to be tomorrow. So there's a couple bolts that go in each end of the runways, and those they specify to lubricate the bolts with WD-40 and torque them down. So I took some time making sure all that was right. One corner is very difficult because it's where the hydraulic cylinder goes in. It's kind of hard to get a wrench on the back side to hold the nut from spinning, but even that wasn't too bad. So the next thing they actually specify mounting the hydraulic cylinder, but it's already mounted. They also specify that you should unmount any of the pulley sheaves that are pre-mounted, but those aren't mounted. So there's some small discrepancies. Actually, the instructions say remove any pulley sheaves that may have been mounted. So I guess that's not really that surprising. I guess sometimes they do that. The next thing I need to do is crawl underneath it, and they suggest using an air gun to carefully blow into the hydraulic cylinder to extend it, because it needs to be extended all the way in order to route the cables. So I'm going to see if I can get the camera mounted underneath there so you can see what that looks like. Okay, a view from underneath the ramp. You see the hydraulic cylinder, and you can see, so what I need to do is there's a cap on this port that I need to get out of there, and there's a cap on this port, and I need to blow into the one on the head, and that should carefully extend this. So you can see that this piece will slide back, and you can see the plate here where the cables will mount. So once I get it extended, we can see about mounting the cables. Looks like there was a little oil in there, but mostly shipped dry. So now this piece needs to slide out and get bolted to all that, and then I can hook cables to it. Okay, I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to see here, but while I was routing the cable, I realized something. Actually, yes, we can see it here. So the cable goes around this pulley. Well, we're in the cross brace. I'll back up and show you where we're at in a little bit. And there's this bolt that's in the way that it looks like it's just to keep the cable from slipping off. There's no, on other things they mentioned in the manual about pulling some of the stuff apart before you route the cable, they don't mention this. So I went back to the manual and looked, and sure enough, no mention, but I suspect this is something that they added to the design after the manual was written. So I'm going to pull this out temporarily. The cable routes around here and back in to the runway where the hydraulic cylinder is. All right, well, I think that's enough for today. Didn't quite get things finished, but I'm moving along. I've spent the last hour or so routing the 4 cables, which there's nothing too tricky there. It's, each one's a different length, so, checking with the manual to make sure I had the right one in the right place, and I didn't mess that up this time. I'll be honest with you, when I mess things up, I'm sure you've seen that. The one thing that's tricky with that is it's fairly stiff, heavy cable, and getting it routed, and especially down in this corner, which is where the end of that hydraulic cylinder is, all 4 cables meet, and they have to go around pulleys, and you actually have to leave the pulley out until you get the cable in, and then you have to install the pulley and make sure that the cables are in the grooves, of course, and you've got 4 cables all in the way of each other. They're difficult to deal with, I think once all the slack's out, it'll be fine. So I still need to go through and check that the cables are exactly where I want them all the way around. And, but I think that's going to be a tomorrow task, because as you can see, I've got my cold beer and it's getting late in the evening. So I think, pretty sure we can finish this up tomorrow. It's just a matter of making sure those cables are correct. I need to mount the power unit, run the hydraulic lines. There's air lines that go around the safety locks are released by an air line, but none of that should take too long. and wire up my power cable. So we'll take care of that tomorrow. All right, day 3, and I'm hopefully gonna finish things up today. This looks like another one of those things that would probably be easier with 2 people, but I think I can manage by myself. This is the hydraulic pump. It's a little awkward, especially until you realize that this end's just plastic reservoir, so when I pulled it out of the box, it was kind of unwieldy, just because you need to realize all the weight's on this end. So that is going to get mounted right here, and so I need to be able to hold it there and get some bolts in. Let's see how it goes. So I almost forgot this. It comes with this block of rubber, just fairly stiff but flexible rubber that goes between the pump and the post to reduce some vibration. I think this will help hold the bolts in place too. Okay, yeah, I think I can just, oh, this is going to work out great. The holes on this are fairly small, so if I get a socket, I should be able to drive these in. Okay, so I was able to get 3 of the bolts in, threaded through the rubber. The holes are small enough that it's going to hold the bolts in place. That last one, I think I'm going to do the bolt in the other direction just because there's no real good way to get a wrench on the back side of it. But this should be enough. I can get the unit lifted up and installed. Okay, I got it on a few threads. It's enough that it holds it in place. Okay, we have reached our first snag. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but it mentions how on some systems the ports may be on opposite sides, other times they're on the same side. It shows here. Sometimes it's on the same side, sometimes it's on opposite sides, and it says check your unit to see which one you've got. So I was expecting there to be some labels. I mean, obviously this is one of them, this plastic plug, but we've got a port capped off here. We've got a couple ports capped off here, and nothing is labeled. So I'm gonna have to do some research, and I may have to call their technical support line, but I'm thinking I've got the part numbers for the hydraulic pump made by Ranger, which is just another company owned by BendPak. Hopefully I can find a manual for that and figure out what port is what. Well, I wasn't able to find any information online, but from looking at the pictures and looking at the sizes of the ports, I realized that it does look like this is the main one that they show, where there's the hydraulic port here, the feed port or power port they call it, and around on this side is the return port, or just the air compression fitting. So I haven't tightened this, but a little Teflon tape and the air fitting goes in here. This fitting here and the part with the O-ring threads in there, and then we can tighten it with this set nut so that it points the right direction. That's going to go into this port, and then we can run some lines. All right, well, I've had a busy couple of hours, a lot of little stuff that I didn't bother filming because it was kind of hard to see. But what I've done is I've run through this flexible hose is where the hydraulic line goes, and also the air line and the hydraulic return line, which was a little confusing because the hydraulic return line, it uses the same line as an air line. So I was trying to figure out how that worked till I realized it was just they didn't need a high pressure line or high volume line for the return. So what it is there's a hydraulic line that goes into that cylinder that's in this runway, and then the air line goes in, and there's T's, and it goes off to align to all 4 corners to release the safety locks. And then that goes to this valve up here, which I need to for now, eventually I'm gonna plumb hard lines for the entire shop for the air compressor. Right now I'm just using a portable air compressor, so I'm just gonna put a quick coupling on there and we can hook that up. And I've done the electrical. Now, this is going to be on caster wheels, so I needed something flexible and easy to deal with. So what I did is I bought 30 feet of stranded 8-gauge 3-conductor wire and a plug that works in my welding outlet, so I can just plug this into the welding outlet. I've got good flexibility. I should be able to move this pretty much anywhere in the shop and be able to, or anywhere I'm likely to use it, I'll be able to reach one of the 2 welding outlets I've got. So I'm just about ready to fire this thing up. It takes Dexron 3 automatic transmission fluid, which is wonderful because I've had most of a box of that for about 15 years because I haven't had anything that used that. So I'm going to use that up. I don't know if I've got enough, so I may end up heading to the parts store in a little bit to get a little bit more, but we'll use this up and hopefully it'll be enough to raise the lift up. Okay, well, I put 12 quarts in. I didn't quite have enough in that box, but I found a couple other random quarts in my cabinets. I double checked the book and it says to fill it with 12 quarts, but that is still nowhere near full. So I am going to have to go out and get some more, but this should be enough to at least raise it up enough to take the slack out of the cables. So moment of truth, I didn't even try this before I turned the camera on. There's a lot of slack in the cables. There's a lot of slack in the cylinder since the cylinder is fully extended, but obviously we installed the ramps a little bit higher up when we did it. So I'm going to do this really slowly, take the slack out of the cylinder, have it pull on the cables, make sure everything's lined up where it should be, and let's see what happens. Okay, I've spent several minutes hitting the button a little bit, going around, checking all the cables. Want to make sure all the cables are in the pulleys and nothing's bound up anywhere. I've just got the last little bit of slack or most of the slack out. And here's the real moment of truth. I'm not gonna go very high, but we're gonna actually raise the lift. Success! And it looks like, I need to get levels out, but it looks like it's raising even on all 4 corners started lifting at about the same time. And it looks level. I don't hear any scary noises. I think we're doing good. I have not yet plumbed in my connection for my air hose, so I'm going to do that really quick, move all the crap out of the way, and I'm going to set it all the way down to make sure that works. And I need to run it up and down a few times to work the air out of it. I need to level it, and I need to put the ramps on. That's pretty much it. Okay, so I've taken a few minutes. I've cleaned some stuff up. I've picked up a few of my tools. Most importantly, I got the stuff from underneath it taken care of. I've hooked in my quick connect for my air hose. So let's see if we can lower this thing. So we need to lift it back up off the stops. This should release it, and I can see the safety locks release, and it should come down all the way. Not real quickly, but considering there's no car on it, this isn't bad. I can hear some air coming back into the return, which is good. We're bleeding some air out, and there we go. And we should be able to raise it back up. Seems to be working beautifully. So I can tell not all the safety locks engage at the same time, so I'll probably need to tweak that a little bit, but they seem to be pretty close. Okay, I can see I've got a hydraulic leak, so I'm going to have to tighten this fitting. Actually, I should get it down on the safety before I get under it. Never go under it without the safeties engaged. Do as I say, not as I do. Well, I found another one of those things they don't bother to mention in the manual. I had found these bolts with spacers in the box, and I had noticed, I kind of guessed that since there's nothing holding the bottom of this ladder and there's holes that line up that these fit in, that this should go in there. The manual never told me anything about this, so I'm thinking this is another one of those things they added later on. So would have been easier to do this before I had everything together, but we can get it in now. I found I can't get my fingers in there, but I can get it close to in place. And hello, Dixie. I get it more or less in place. Lift it up with the magnet. I can slide the bolt in. This went really smoothly on the one I did off camera. There it goes. Now I just tighten these up on all four. Well, I should be keeping a list of all the things that they don't mention in the manual that are tripping me up. One of the last things, I was making sure I accounted for all the parts in the box, and there's a bag of grease fittings in there. No mention in the manual anywhere about greasing it even, or installing grease zerks. But I did find, at least on these main rollers, right here, this is the pin that supports the main roller. The cable comes through here and up to the top, and they fit there. So that accounts for 4 of them. I'm assuming the other 4 are in the pulleys that are underneath the main runway. So I'm going to install these 4, grease them, lift it up, and we'll see if they go in there. Underneath here, I don't know if I can get this on camera, but these are the pins that hold the large pulleys underneath, and sure enough, inside there is a hole that looks like it's just the right size for that grease fitting. Well, at this point, the lift is essentially finished. If I were bolting it down to the floor, I'd be doing that now, but really the reason I went for a 4-post lift instead of a 2-post lift is I can put this on wheels and move it. So the last thing I've got here is the optional caster kit. Now, these don't get permanently mounted to the lift. You actually just install them when you need to move the lift, and then you remove them. But I think that'll work out well for this shop, because I'm not completely sure where I want it permanently. No matter where if I were to bolt it down, no matter where I put it, it would sometimes be the wrong place. So I think this is the way to go. No instructions with these, but I've seen them used. They're pretty simple. There's a pin that goes through the leg. And then we've got a large washer and a cotter pin. We do that on all 4 sides, and we just lower the lift, and when the lift goes all the way down, that pushes on this as a lever, picks the post up, and we can move it wherever we want. Huh. It didn't go down all the way. Almost seems like there needs to be some more weight on it. Okay, it's still going down, just really slowly. I can see the posts are picking up. The lift is still slowly going down. And I think I should be able to move it. Hey, that actually moves pretty easy. Easier than I thought. Now I just need to clean this up enough that I've got room to move it over to where I can get a car onto it. All right, so I've got it positioned where I want it, and now to take the caster wheels back out, all I need to do is raise the lift, which will cause the post to go back down. I can pull the caster wheels out, and then ready to load a car on it. Oh, that's going to make life a lot easier around here. Well, it feels good to be done. This was a bigger project than I thought it would be. I picked up the lift from the shipping depot in Manchester on Monday at about 1 o'clock. So most of Monday was unpacking it and getting some basic stuff done. I did quite a bit of work yesterday, which was Tuesday, but I had to go out for a lot of the afternoon, and I spent pretty much all day today. A little bit of a late start. I started at about 10 o'clock and I took about an hour off from lunch, but it's 8 o'clock now. So yeah, I still spent more than a full day on this. I specifically was trying to double and triple check everything. It take a lot of time. So, if I was to do another one of these, I'm sure I could do it quicker. But anyway, I'm happy I did it myself. When I started the project, I tried looking for some YouTube videos on how to put one together. There's not much out there because really it seems like, and for good reason, the company recommends that you use a trained installer to do this. But hopefully this is useful for people who are thinking about doing it themselves. I want to repeat, this is not a step-by-step how-to. Please follow the instructions very closely and make sure it's within your capability. But if you are if you're on the fence of, do I want to spend the time or hire someone? Well, if you're if you've never done it before like I have, it's probably going to take you a couple of days. So figure your time, what your time's worth. I like doing things myself. I like figuring out how things go together. And also I feel if I put it together, I'm more qualified to run it because I know how all the bits work and I know what to watch out for. So anyway, I got some more projects coming up. I'm going to get my old International truck here on the lift because I got to do some brake and suspension work, and it'll be nice to get it up in the air to be able to do that. Going to continue working on the Datsun, lots of rusty metal to replace there, and who knows what else. But for now, I'm going to enjoy seeing my Tacoma up on the lift, enjoy a cold beer, and I'm going to call it a day.